All right, let's start over. It is 6:30 on March 2nd, 2026, and I would like to call this meeting of the Holyoke City Council's Committee on Charter and Rules to order. With me in chambers is our city councilors, Mike Sullivan and Patty Devine. With me on the committee is Rick Purcell. I'm Mimi Panich, the chair, and joining us by Zoom is Vice Chair Linda Vacan. Also on Zoom is City Councilor Ann Thalheimer, and I don't see anyone else yet. But at this point, I would entertain a motion to take up item 1.
I make a motion that we take item 1 off the table.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And item 1 is the minutes from February 4th, 2026. Are there any?
Motion to receive.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And at this,
Motion to take up item 2,
if I
or
may,
maybe you want to take up 3 with it?
well, what I had wanted to do, since Councilor Sullivan is here for item 10, is take up item
Okay.
10 out of order, if that works for you.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we suspend rules, go out of order to take up item 10.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item 10, filed on 2/3/26 by Councilor Sullivan, ordered that the City Council amend its rules to establish clearer and more stringent guidelines governing public comment, including but not limited to requiring individuals participating remotely keep their cameras on while speaking during public comment. And Councilor Sullivan, would you like to take us off here?
Yeah, thank you. The reason I filed this order is when we've had public comment for quite a while, but back during COVID, we amended our rules or allowed some flexibility in the rules because people could not attend in person. So we started having people come in on Zoom, and also I believe it's at that point also that we started taking just emails as well. All right, and my concern is, number one, oftentimes with people on Zoom, we hear a name and an address, but there's a slogan, a sign, something else put up there. But the person themselves, we don't know if that's really that person or not. Right? And that's the idea behind public comment, is for that person to be there. My other concern is also with AI, it could be anybody, whereas we have a person standing here, we know who it is, they identify themselves. And I would like at the very least that when we do have people come in on Zoom, that they show themselves in person and not just a poster or a slogan or whatever else they want, which also, by the way, I believe we also have a council rule about signs, slogans, in the council chambers, which is in effect the same thing they're doing when they put that on a Zoom poster instead of showing themselves, and that really is that person who is making the comment.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point about AI and security.
Yep.
And one question that I know has been raised about this is, do you have any thoughts about how we handle people who are attempting to attend by phone? I don't know if you can show yourself on the phone.
Well,
I mean,
like
I don't
said-
do it myself, so I genuinely don't know.
Like I said, the public comment piece is not, it's not having it or not having it. It's a choice of the council to have public comment. It's not a violation of the First Amendment for free speech. We don't have to have public comment. It's not required.
That's true, but I don't think we can pick and choose among people who we allow to comment without some kind of policy about it. And I think we'd probably have to refer that to the law department just to get a guess. Can we, if we do allow public comment, insist that somebody who can only attend by phone not be allowed to speak if it's true that they can't show themselves on the phone. I just don't know. I'm not arguing so much as
Well-
raising the question. And Councillor Purcell.
A great example is we have a city councilor that zooms in, doesn't zoom in, he comes in by phone. And I'm not saying that's public comment. He's actually in the meeting and he can only do it by phone. 'cause
Right.
he doesn't have a computer, so we shouldn't exempt him from the council meeting.
No, but that's not the issue in front of us. The issue in front of us right now is public comment, all right? Not what we do with the council meetings themselves. Now, as far as, so I mean, that's something else if somebody else wants to address it, but it's not specifically what I'm addressing in this order, so.
And I was, through you, I was just making that as an example. Somebody can only do public comment via phone. All you're going to see is a telephone. You're not going to see a picture or a slogan. So I don't know if it really matters because they're not using political stuff. A phone, the phone itself isn't a political thing. It's just a green phone.
Yep.
Yeah. Councillor
But
Devine, would you want
without
to speak?
seeing them in person, we do not know if that is really who it is.
I agree with Mike, too. As an example, many of us have seen the skull and crossbones, but we don't know who that is, their name. I know he mentions where he lives, but something like that, to me, it just, they should do something a little different, a little more positive than just that, you know. I know everybody can't switch over and, you know, be on Zoom and have them on Zoom, you know, physically, but that skull and crossbones always bothers me when that comes up. Thank you.
And if I can just pause here to mention that Councillor McGrath Smith has also joined us on Zoom. And you have your hand up.
So, if I just
are you-
finish, maybe so I'm a little clearer. The idea behind public comment was so people could come in here, stand at the microphone, and address the council. All right? That was the intent of it. During COVID, we extended it and extended it, and I just feel it's just gotten a little bit out of hand right now, and especially with the way it's being treated by some members of the public.
Well, I want to recognize Councillor McGrath Smith and Councillor Thalheimer, whose hand I just saw after Councillor McGrath Smith. Meg, you want to go ahead?
Sure. So thank you, Madam Chair. I think I wanted to reiterate what I've been hearing so far. I really do agree that I would love for public comment to feel more like we have an understanding of who is participating. And so I guess I wonder, but I'm also caring about access, and so that's a balance. And I'm wondering if what we're saying is that we would like to no longer allow folks to be able to call in for public comment, but we're requiring folks to come in person or to be able to Zoom in and be able to be seen. I don't know if it would be fair to say that if you're on Zoom, you have to be seen, but you can still call in, because then, of course, those folks aren't being seen. But I'm also, worried about folks who just don't have access to a computer, and so then, as a result, they don't have the ability to engage in public comment. I don't think I solved any of your problems, but I do hear the tension between those things.
Thank you. Councillor Thalheimer.
Thank you. I'll turn on my camera, but also I want to remind you that this is an issue of access, right?
Yeah.
We don't have, we recently had an order that said that it was impossible for someone or very difficult for someone in a wheelchair to get into City Hall. If we are continuing to put barriers to access on public comment, that is a serious, that's fairly serious. I also want to remind folks that not everybody has a stable internet connection. Not everyone can afford it. If you are not able to maintain a steady internet connection, one of the things you do is you turn off your camera so it can work better, right? I think these are all important considerations, and I am deeply wary of anything that starts restricting access to the public to participate in public comment. We don't have a system right now that makes it really easy for folks to come in. Coming in when you are able-bodied is a significant haul. We don't have childcare. It is not comfortable seating. We don't know how long we're going to sit there and wait, etc. It is a lot easier for folks who are busy at home or have kids or the weather is terrible to zoom in. And sometimes when the weather is terrible, your internet connection is terrible, right? So requiring someone to have their camera on for public comment seems like a way to disenfranchise people participating in this. So I have concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm certainly open to the idea of the public having access. However, I think if the public is addressing us with serious items for consideration, we should know who is addressing us. I'm less concerned about necessarily them being live, but I am concerned about knowing their name and where they live. And I would say, particularly for those who come in for public comment, who've had their photo and their name published in the newspaper in print, to then come in and say they're not going to disclose who they are, I think is disingenuous. So I do think if they're going to come in on the microphone in public, they need to tell us their name and where they live. If they want their comments to be documented in an official and public record and their comments to be given serious consideration by the council. And I feel quite strongly about that because anybody can come into the chambers, call into the chambers, or come on Zoom and say, my name is Linda and I live in Ward 3. You have no idea what city, town, state they live in when a person says that. You have no idea whether they're from Holyoke or from somewhere else, and it's not verifiable. So I find that problematic as much as I am certainly in favor of having our residents, and then under a suspension of rules, others speak at our public, speak out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeffrey has his hand up.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, I just have a technical detail that I think is relevant for the discussion. Just in terms of how access is given to the public when they are allowed to speak on Zoom. So early on when we were first getting into Zoom, there were a few instances when we were having some Zoom bombing situations, people joining for malicious reasons rather than participating, honestly. And during that time, I was asked if there was a way to be able to avoid that or at least monitor it more quickly. So when somebody is attending Zoom, because we have webinar, we have people who are panelists. All of you who are able to be seen on screen are a panelist. We have people watching the meeting who are attendees. They can watch the meeting, but they cannot be seen or participate. So if we want to give one of those people the ability to speak, there are two different ways it can be done. One is just by leaving them as an attendee and allowing them to talk. And one is by promoting them to be a panelist. Now, early on, when I was asked to find a way to cut people off quicker if they're there for malicious reasons, one of the solutions to that was changing it from promoting those people to panelists to just simply allowing them to talk. And what that does is if they begin speaking and it's clear they're there for malicious reasons, I can quickly remove their permission to talk. If they've been brought in as a panelist, it takes a little bit longer to remove them as a panelist, so it allows them, a few more seconds to say whatever they're hoping to say. The other detail of that is if I'm promoting somebody to panelist there's probably going to be about a 10-second delay before they're brought in, and then when they're removed as a panelist, there's again a delay. So obviously, I have no stake in this game. I just thought those details would be relevant for the discussion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And Councillor Thalheimer, your hand is up again, or was that a holdover?
It is again a second, yes. Thank you. Jeffrey addressed some of the things that I wanted to bring up, because it's not just people popping into Zoom. Like, there is a verification process, which I think is key in this. And secondarily, I think it's really important to emphasize again the reasons why someone might have their camera off. It may also be a privacy concern. Like, for example, I have my background blurred for a reason. There are real security concerns. We have had people at public comment be doxxed and had their personal information put out in ways that have brought them harm. We have a responsibility to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And before I start asking questions, does anybody else want to pop in here? Councillor Devine.
I just have a question. What is dox? I've heard it many times. What specifically is it? I think Ian, and I don't even know how I would dim the background. So a lot of us might need some lessons, but the docs, I just don't know what that is.
Do you want to take that or have me take it?
Whoever knows.
It is up to you, Chair.
Go for it.
Okay, so doxing in general parlance is publishing private or identifying information about a particular individual on the internet, usually with malicious intent. So this would be a post where if somebody wanted to dox me, they might take a screenshot of my picture and like cover up my identifying name and say, who is this person? Does anybody know where she lives? I want to find her.
Okay.
That is doxing.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, the security concern with this, and this unfortunately has happened, although I hope that it has never happened in Holyoke and won't, is that malicious actors from anywhere in the country can use this information to suddenly jump on somebody. And there have been things where people have called in emergency reports for people's families and houses, and you have helicopters and security personnel invading their homes at 3 a.m. because they've had a kidnapping report. And they don't know that it isn't true. The benign version of this is having 300 pizzas delivered to you. And, unfortunately, it does happen. So I think the security concerns are real. Councillor Sullivan.
Then if it's that much of a security concern, we shouldn't allow it at all. And we should only have people show up in person if they want to make public comment.
Well, that is a policy question. As I think we all know, one of the things that the legislature is considering is making remote access and these kind of remote meetings or hybrid meetings something standard rather than something that is just available because we're at the tail end of the COVID emergency. And the argument in favor, which I agree with entirely, is that there's a real public access benefit to it. And I see Meg waving for recognition, and I'm going to shut up and let her talk. Meg.
Thank you, Ms. Penn. I just wanted to read that I had Emma Care from my ward email me, and she asked if I would share this. She said, what Councillor Sullivan is proposing perhaps holds members of the public to a higher standard than our council members. Councilors are not required to keep their cameras on if virtually calling in, as long as they can be audibly heard. Further, it can very much be a safety issue to have your face now matched with your address recorded on YouTube and accessible to the public for years. The people, we didn't run for public office. We're just trying to voice our concerns. So I think that it's important for us to listen to our constituents. I know there's probably voices on every side here, but I really value what she has to say. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. But, I agree. There are increasing security issues to having your face and name anywhere out there. AI is making it worse. This is not something unique to Holyoke, but I think perhaps, rather than just say, well, we want to know who's talking to us, so have everyone turn their cameras on, we want to think about what the issues are. What risks are we trying to avoid? What do we gain? What security measures could we start being proactive about so that people can participate more safely? And I think also we would want to get the city solicitor's advice about, can we, without running afoul of any rules, allow for public comment and also allow for what will amount to discrimination on the basis of who has what kind of access to remote access, and whether there is anything we can do legally to verify people's information before they're allowed to talk. And otherwise, I would not like to make policy around this without knowing what our real options are. So I see that City Solicitor Bissonnette is with us, and this is completely unexpected, but Solicitor Bissonnette, if you have any immediate thoughts about this, I'm sure I'm not the only one who'd like to hear them. And if you don't, we can carry this over. Yeah. No, go ahead.
Thank you to the chair. I see a couple of options. It depends on how stringent you want to make your own rules. The one general restraint is that once you establish a public comment period, and you don't have to at all, as Councilor Sullivan pointed out, you're not required to. But once you do, it has to be content neutral. Much like signage, you can regulate the time, place, size, that sort of thing. But it has to be content neutral. You can make a limit, however, as to issues that either are on your agenda that evening or are under the jurisdiction of the city council. So some communities have done that to exclude topics of which the city council has no vote or role. Example, opposing the Iranian attacks. You'd have no role there other than to voice an opinion. So some communities would not allow people to comment on that. So within those parameters, I think you've got some room. The issue of allowing those to comment via iPhone or phone is more difficult, certainly, than the video. However, you could allow those without video capabilities to make prior arrangements through your AA to be allowed, much as we do in situations where there needs to be handicap issues addressed prior to a meeting. So that may be one way around it if you want to continue video. However, you do not have to continue remote public comment simply because we're having remote meetings. That's not required. But as long as you do have public comment, then you have to allow it to be open in the meeting. You may require people to identify that they are living in the community. I know some people have argued for ward. You can limit the address requirement, but that's entirely up to the council making its rule. So within those parameters, I think you've had a good discussion, and when you're ready to craft a rule, I'd be happy to help. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I think what I'm hearing is, we do have these complexities, and rather than attempt to figure it out tonight, perhaps we should take this information, put it on again for the next meeting, and we can all come in and see what we can agree to at that point. Does that sound good to everybody?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine too, because we have a city council meeting tomorrow, and that it'll show who shows up for public comment, who zooms in for public comment, so that'll give us a little bit of an idea.
Yeah, it'll help us collect information.
So I'll make a motion that we table it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. See you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
And returning to regular order, do we have,
Did you want a package, Madam Chair?
sure thing. You want to make that motion?
So I'll make a motion to take up items 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, maybe as a package to start.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All of these obviously are related to the conforming changes that we need to make to the charter so that it conforms to the ordinances for the Financial Reorganization Act we just passed. And I want to call out the help I got from Solicitor Bissonnette and from the mayor's office just to get this stuff out to you. I think you all have the red lines. And it's pretty straightforward, except for, I'm looking for which one involves Article 22 of the Charter.
I left that off of this group.
Okay, great. So I assume that we've all had a chance to read these. Does anyone have any comments about them? Rick, was that your hand?
No, I'm just turning the page.
Okay, Councillor Bacon.
Should we read the orders?
Oh, yes.
Madam Chair?
Sorry, Councillor Devine.
I'm just wondering if we should include item number 12. It's laid on the table, but I think based on the fact that we have the CAFO, going to have that in place, maybe item 12 could be in addition to what you have there.
Let's just see here. Right. Councillor Bacon is right. Once more, I have forgotten how the city council operates, and I'm treating it like the planning board instead. I will read these orders. Okay. Item 2, 21726 from Councillor Panich, ordered that the Law Department review the Charter and previously adopted Special Act to identify any additional changes in order to reflect the recent adoption of the Municipal Modernization Act. Receive, refer to Charter and Rules. Item 3, ordered that the Honorable Holyoke City Council petition the Great and General Court of Massachusetts to amend Section 46 of the Holyoke Charter to reflect the residency clause set by ordinance. Receive and refer to Charter and Rules. Item 4, ordered the Honorable Holyoke City Council petition the Great and General Court of Massachusetts to amend Section 45 of the Holyoke Charter to reflect the residency clause set by ordinance. Item 5, ordered that the Honorable Holyoke City Council petition the Great and General Court of Massachusetts to amend Section 15 of the Holyoke Charter to reflect the new appointing authorities to financial departments and set by ordinance. Yes, item 6, ordered that the Honorable Holyoke City Council petition the Great and General Court of Massachusetts to amend Section 6 of the Holyoke Charter to remove all references to the city treasurer. And Councillor Devine, you had suggested that we also add item 12, which was laid on the table for this meeting.
It's a separate matter,
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah. Okay, so I had one minor minor wording correction to one of these, but before I get there, Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first comment and question is relative to item 4 around the residency clause. In the legal form, they're talking about elected office and eliminating the 2-year residency requirement. And in our ordinance, we're only talking about the appointments to the financial offices. There was never any intention to change the requirement for elected office that I've heard or seen an order filed on.
Yeah, no, my reading of this was that it still requires residency of the elected officers.
Well, could we take a look at that and
Sure, I'm just,
confirm if that's the case? It may be that I was just seeing a portion.
yeah, let me attempt to find the written one, because I believe that that's the one that I thought needed a wording change.
Okay.
It's this one.
Yeah, and the suggested change is, any elected office established under this or by act shall become vacant if the incumbent ceases to be a resident of the city. And the conviction of the incumbent of any such office of a crime punishable by imprisonment shall operate to create a vacancy in the office held by him. But that's old language. And, that reads to me as we're taking out the superintendent of schools, but the elected officials are all still subject to that residency requirement.
Okay, so I'm looking at the item marked number 4, section 45, eligibility to hold office. No person shall be eligible to any of the elected offices of the city government.
Yes, that needs a word put in, is no person shall be eligible to any of the elected offices of the city government unless they are a citizen and a resident of the city.
Right, but our ordinances do not contemplate eliminating the 2-year requirement for an elected official. Our ordinances that were passed 11-2 only contemplate residency relative to the appointment of the financial positions.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The ordinance that was recently passed
Yeah.
only contemplated changes to the residency requirement for the appointed positions of the finance department. We've not changed any ordinance relative to the 2-year residency requirement for people running for elected office. So this is not bringing us into alignment with our ordinances. This is a whole new matter that we do not have an order in front of us for.
Okay, fair enough. Solicitor Bissonnette, do you know how or what the basis for this order was? Because if this is a stealth, we are eliminating a 2-year requirement that hasn't been discussed. Obviously, it should not go forward.
Follow discussion, other than my pointing out that there was a 2-year requirement, section 45. I don't recall any discussion about eliminating it, though. I know we focus mostly on, because the ordinance is now exempt quite a few department heads from the requirement of residency. But that discussion about timing only involved giving certain individuals I don't want to call it a probationary period, but it was an extended period of time,
Yeah.
2 years, to move in.
Yeah,
So
no,
I'm not certain if they got confused or not, but I don't recall this.
okay, thank you.
I mean, it's entirely up to the city council if it wants to send up a charter change to the legislature, one that the mayor agrees with. You certainly have that authority.
Yeah, no, I'm embarrassed about this because I had not realized that this was actually changing anything that was not being changed because of discussions last year at some point. I think this is a big change. If we are going to eliminate a 2-year residency rule for elected officials, then we need to go back and think about this, not just vote it through tonight. And Councillor Devine.
Yeah, if I'm reading this correctly, what this is saying is that a city councilor, somebody who wanted to run for city council, would have to be a resident of the city for 2 years before they ran. Is that how I'm reading it?
Yeah, that I think is what Councillor Bacon is telling us, that that is our current rule, and this would change it to if you've moved in here in the last month, you could run.
Okay. I just want to make sure,
Yeah, and that may be the way we want to go. I see that Councillor McGrath Smith's hand is up, but also Solicitor Bissonnette's hand is up, and I think Solicitor Bissonnette, if you want to talk to us, that would be very helpful.
If you want to move this section 45 charter change forward, all you'd have to do tonight is take out that last clause as being deleted. So it would still read at the end for at least 2 years. I will tell you, the law department did look at this for a couple of reasons 4 years ago and determined that it could be subject to a constitutional challenge if it's not in alignment with the state law requirements. So not necessarily saying that constitutional challenge would be successful, but it certainly gives rise to one if somebody were here for a year and a half and wanted to run and would otherwise be eligible. So I just point that out. But in order to move this forward along with section 46, you can redline everything except that last clause, which I see that the magician, the Wizard of Oz, has already done. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to offer a motion that we eliminate the red line for at least 2 years, as has been done on the screen by our administrative assistant to amend. That's my motion.
Okay, and if I can hold that in abeyance for a moment, Councillor McGrath Smith's hand has been up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to say that I'm not against removing the language that requires residency for 2 years. My understanding is that if there was a legal challenge that we wouldn't necessarily win that one, but also we do have our own requirements that you have to be living in the city when you file your papers, because you're legally attesting to your local address when you pull papers, and we have a deadline for you to pull papers before the election that's several months beforehand. So I think that there is already a mechanism in place for us to ensure residency several months before. And I could just see a number of situations where, someone could have left the city temporarily and then moved back. There's plenty of opportunities for somebody to, be returning to the city and then want to run. So I don't see the need for someone to necessarily live here for 2 years before we're saying they're allowed to get involved, especially because there could be people who are returning from having lived elsewhere. So I'm certainly not against removing that. My bigger concern is actually with all of the redlining. I'm just going to read it for how I think it reads right now, because it doesn't grammatically seem to flow or follow fluency currently. It says, no person shall be eligible to any of the elected offices of the city government. They are a citizen and a resident of the city for at least 2 years. I think that's what it currently reads, unless I'm misunderstanding the red and the straight throughs. It doesn't seem fluent.
I think it's missing an unless.
Yeah, it needs one word.
Where is that?
It isn't there.
Oh, okay.
Goes before they.
Okay, so no person shall be eligible to any of the elected offices of the city government unless they are a citizen and a resident of the city for at least 2 years. Okay, at least with the unless it's fluent, but yeah, I would be tempted to remove the language after city. I think that makes sense.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the table, or a motion before us. Does anyone want to second it before I ask Patty Devine to speak?
I will second it.
Okay, under discussion. Councillor Devine.
Yeah, a resident of the city, that for at least 2 years is locked out.
The motion is to remove it.
Unless mine is wrong.
Yours is not wrong.
Okay. Unless, yeah, I got that, superintendent.
Okay.
They are a citizen and have been a resident of city. So
Yeah,
this for 2 years is not in there. I mean, that's what mine says.
yeah, no, that's the correct order.
Okay, so they don't have to be a resident for 2 years to run for office.
Yeah,
Okay.
That is what I gather has not been in our ordinances that Councillor Bacon caught. And the question before us, I think now is, should we strike that part? Or do we want to actually consider getting rid of that long-term residency requirement?
Meg's hands up.
And, sorry, whose hand is up?
Meg.
I thought you had,
I second.
Sorry, I forgot to
Okay.
lower my hand.
okay, go for it.
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
All right, then Councillor Bacon, whose hand
Thank
is
you.
up.
So I'm hoping the committee will adopt my motion to eliminate the red line and keep the 2-year requirement for elected office, because the city council has had no order filed to change that, nor has it made an ordinance change to change it. So if we want to make that change, we need to go through the process of having an order filed, changing the ordinance, and then forwarding it to the state as part of the charter package. But I do not believe under our current ordinance, we're saying we're coming into compliance with the ordinance. This exceeds that. So I hope the committee will support the elimination of the red line. We've made no votes to change any elected office requirements yet.
Okay, and I think that City Solicitor Bissonnette had suggested that we could pass this, or the part of it that eliminates the superintendent of schools resident, or reference.
Yes. Yes. So my motion is to keep in the redlined portion that says for at least 2 years, and to move forward with the rest of the legal form as written, adding unless before they.
Okay, Councillor Devine.
So my question again is, does somebody who wants to run for elected office have to be a resident for at least 2 years? Yes or
Yes.
no?
Yes,
I would
Questionably.
never vote for that.
it's
Never.
already an ordinance.
I would never vote for that.
Okay.
It's
so
current law.
Thank you.
part of what's going on here is that we have just been informed that there are constitutional questions about that residency requirement. And it is in our rules or our ordinances. We don't know whether it would survive a legal challenge or not. So I think the easiest way to go forward from here is probably to adopt Councillor Bacon's motion and to then do as she suggests, and I can file an order for our next city, well, I can't do it for tomorrow night, but I can do it for the one after that, to get rid of the residency requirement, and we can come back here and do that. I mean, not the residency requirement at all, but the 2-year period.
Again, those words are already redlined.
Yeah, those rules are already redlined, and Councillor Bacon's suggestion is that we cannot, according to our own rules, move forward with that tonight. It's a process thing.
Yep.
And I hate to keep picking on our city solicitor, but if he would like to tell me whether I should file an order on this or whether we can move the whole thing tonight. We can take a vote on it. But otherwise, I would call for a vote on Councilor Bacon's motion and assume that I'm filing an order to fix this.
Agree with that.
Thank you. Okay, then. We have a motion.
If I may, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
The other point I wanted to make on this is that while we were discussing this a couple of years back, the issue of a college student going away for 4 years.
Yeah.
He's lived here since he was 18. He hasn't lived here in 4 years, but he's returned. And now he wants to run for the council, or if you're really smart and went to Brown, you run for mayor. What is the rule then? Do the cumulative amount of time count, or only the last 2 years? In your discussions, I think that bears looking at least. So it may be beyond the scope of tonight.
Yeah. No, thank you. That is useful. And I will file that order because I agree with Councilor Devine on this. And also, I think that it makes for all kinds of problems determining what residency is. But for tonight, I think on the motion to amend this red line for tonight, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We should probably do a roll call.
Okay, roll call vote. Councilor Purcell.
Yes.
Councilor Bacon.
Yes.
Councilor Panich, yes. Motion to accept the revision and forward it to the City Council with a recommendation that it be adopted.
Second.
All in favor? Roll call vote.
Aye.
Councilor Bacon, aye. Councilor Purcell,
Aye.
aye. Councilor Panich, aye. Okay, that's number 4. If we can return to number 3. Does anyone have an issue with that red line? That's section 46. It says, officer ceasing to be resident, conviction of crime. Any elected office established under or by this act, except the office of superintendent of schools, we are striking that, shall become vacant if the incumbent ceases to be a resident of the city. The conviction of the incumbent of any such office of a crime punishable by imprisonment shall operate to create a vacancy in the office held by him. Does anyone have any commentary about this? It is our current rule just getting rid of the superintendent of schools.
Chair.
Councilor Bacon.
So my only question is, we never restricted the offices to elected. It was simply an office established under the act. Now, I know that we've taken away the residency requirement of many of them, but we have not taken away the other requirements relative to how a vacancy would be required. So I'm just wondering why elected has been put in and why not any office established under this is left as it is, with the office of superintendent of schools eliminated because it was an exception. Why have we added elected and made it elected only?
I believe, and again, I can be corrected on this, it's because anyone who is not an elected officer can be dismissed. And we have seen that elected officers there are issues with. We can't just decide that they're gone.
And so is, if I may, through the chair to our law department, is the superintendent of schools the only one under this language that would not be elected?
The only office under this charter section, it applies to would now be the mayor, the city clerk, members of the city council, members of the school committee.
Okay, so there wouldn't be any of
Point
the
is,
other,
if I could finish, just so we're clear, the reason why this changed was when we had the discussion, when we started doing accept the office of, and then because of the Municipal Modernization Act has all the disciplinary and removal proceedings laid out, we
Correct.
realized there was no reason to have all of that in the charter. We'll just simplify it. So this is consistent
Okay.
with that change.
okay, I just wanted to be sure there weren't any other listed positions that were not elected that should remain in here, but you're stipulating that there are not.
Not right.
So how would it work in the case of the internal auditor?
In
If we
that
say.
case, there would be a
only elected-
dispute that would be brought to the city council by the CAFO. A dispute between the CAFO and the internal auditor, and that would have to be resolved by the council after. And if it couldn't be, I'm sorry, it would be resolved between the CAFO, the auditor, and the mayor. If they couldn't resolve it, it would then involve the city council president, who would be the mediator and would determine the outcome. If
Right.
it was disciplinary, then it would go to the full city council to act on a petition for removal.
Right, but our ordinances are of a lower order of law than our charter. And it seems to me, if we take out, as an example, the Office of the Internal Auditor, we would be faced with an ongoing disciplinary process in the case of a person found guilty of a crime punishable by imprisonment, and we would not be able to discharge that person. We would have to go through all that disciplinary process of all those steps, other than because we would no longer be guided by the charter. So it seems if we're going to,
Alternatively, you would no longer have to wait for the conviction, provided you gave due process. Now, usually municipalities will not do that. There's a criminal act going on to suspend, usually with pay, which is an unfortunate circumstance, but that's pretty much where we're at with disciplinary proceedings in the Commonwealth these days. It costs cities an awful lot of money, and we've seen some of that play out here in Holyoke. But it's entirely up to the council. I mean, if they want to leave that provision in there, the problem is you're going to have to basically remove the provision that if you cease to be a resident, because now we've exempted everybody from the residency requirement who's an employee. So I'm not
correct.
sure how,
But my concern isn't about the residency, it's about the rest of it. Because there's two things going on in this charter portion. And it seems that if we're talking about residency, which is the only thing we're talking about in our ordinance, then the charter change that we make should only talk about residency. And I don't see why we couldn't just make it into two sentences.
I actually can see that by having the second sentence apply to any elected or appointed
Yes.
office established under or by this act.
Yes,
So any elected official would be only terminated if they cease to be a resident, and an elected or appointed official would be terminated upon conviction.
yes. That to me would keep us consistent with our charter and with the ordinance we just passed.
Legally, that works. If that's the wish of the committee.
Can Jeffrey show us that change, how it would look?
Apologies, I was looking at an email and missed the change that you were looking for.
Jeffrey, the second sentence would be the conviction of the incumbent of any elected or appointed office under, established under or by this act,
Under or by this act?
I think that's right.
Punishable. Yeah.
Change the last word, Jeffrey, to them instead of him. Look at you all modernizing a 150-year-old document. Amazing. A device I never would have thought possible.
All right, does anyone have any concerns or comments about this change?
I'll make a motion that we amend the red line to the changes that have been made on the screen now to add in the second sentence, the conviction of the incumbent of any elected or appointed office established under or by this act be added, and that him be changed to them, and that we leave in the red line for except the office of superintendent of schools.
Okay,
I second that.
all in favor by roll
Aye.
call vote. Councillor Purcell, that was an aye. Councillor Bacon?
Yes.
Councillor Panich, aye. The change is adopted. Motion to forward this to the city council with a recommendation that it adopt it.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Councillor Bacon? Aye. Councillor Panich? Aye. Okay, that's item 3. Item 5, since we've already done item 4. This is long. Would you like me to read it into the record, or should we consider it read? No one seems to have an opinion about
Was
that.
it posted?
I'm sorry?
I don't think it was posted, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Bacon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On this one, I was a little bit confused because it appeared that the appointment of the assessor was left in the charter where it was taken out of the ordinance. I prefer it to be left in, but that's how I was reading it.
I'm sorry, Counselor McGrath Smith.
And then
And
she's done.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was just going back through the legal form for the Modernization Act. I'm just double checking on the language for the assessor. But I just wanted to say quickly that it seems a good opportunity for us to update any of the gendered language in here. So there's a couple places where it refers to his office. So if we could change it to their office or his and hers office, that would be great.
Or how about just the office?
Perfect, yeah.
yeah, that makes perfect sense. And Counselor Devine, did you want to be recognized? Or
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that all right to speak?
please?
Okay, the first sentence, it appears that in the month of January, we shall pick an administrative assistant to the city council, and they'll only hold that for the term of 1 year. Shouldn't they be holding it for the term of whatever the city council's elected for, that 2-year term? The first sentence.
Thank you. Who sent
This has actually been
Yeah.
changed.
It's been changed already?
I think we changed it in ordinance, but not in the charter.
Yeah, I think that's a conforming change.
What was it changed to? 2 years?
It was.
Oh,
I
okay.
thought so.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Counselor McGrath Smith, your hand is up again?
Thank you. I was just reading through the legal form from the Modernization Act, and underneath Office of Assessors, the language says, there shall be in the city the Office of Assessors, and the chief administrative and financial officer shall appoint, with confirmation of the council and approval of the mayor, a director of assessing to a term up to but not exceeding 3 years. And so I'm just wondering, did we sort of not quite get the draft here right, or referring to a different role? Or do we mean just the assessors underneath the director of assessing? I see a Solicitor Bissonet's hand up. If through the chair to the solicitor, we could hear his thinking on that.
Okay, and I have to apologize at this point because I'm having trouble hearing anybody. But I do see that our city solicitor's hand is up and also that Councillor Vacan's hand is up. And under the circumstances, I think our city solicitor should probably weigh in first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the confusion is this sort of unique to Holyoke situation where you have a 3-member board of assessors. You have a chief assessor that the city council directly appoints every January. And then you have the other two that are, I believe, one is a volunteer position, gets a small stipend. The other is a city employee. So it's sort of an unusual mix and match. In this situation, it would appear to conflict with the language here, except I think the MMA says that it's recommended by the capo and appointed by the capo, confirmed by the council. I think, is that it, Meg?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it says, yeah. So that's for the chief assessor, which is essentially the department head
And the city employee.
and the city employee, right?
So what's named here then is that what we're naming in council is now one assessor. And this is effectively the volunteer.
Right.
Thank you.
So Councillor Vacan.
Thank you. So what the language says is city council shall also annually in the month of January elect by ballot one assessor of taxes and one water commissioner. The assessor that we just elected was Deb Brunel, who is the chief assessor. So this language says that we would be continuing to elect her every 3 years or someone to replace her. This charter language that we're looking at right now, which I'm fine with. But it conflicts with the ordinance language.
Meg's hands up.
Because I think the city council should be appointing the assessor.
Okay,
And
yeah, but Counselor McGrath Smith.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think this is why we're going down this rabbit hole. I think it's hard because initially we were using this term to mean the chief assessor, and now we're keeping the language in, but we no longer mean the chief assessor. We mean the other assessor that we get to pick. That's a volunteer of one of the members of the 3-member board. And so I think that is confusing, and I think that there has to be a way to name that more clearly. And it's a 3-member board, so we're only appointing 1 or 2? Because here it says 1, but if it's a 3-member board, and 1 is now appointed by the CAFO with confirmation of council and the mayor, then wouldn't the other 2 be council? I'm not sure if Sister Bissonnette could answer. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
You think they all should be confirmed by the council? I think where the confusion is whether there's a recommendation to the council or whether it's a direct election, which is the usual format, I think, for the council on election of assessor.
Okay.
But I agree, I think it needs clarification. And I might suggest that this section would benefit by creating 4 subsections, A, B, C, and D. Wouldn't change the language, but I think it would make it read much smoother and make it clearer to the reader.
Okay, so I see both Counselor McGrath Smith and Counselor Bacon's hands are up. I'm going to call on both, but before I do it, it seems clear to me at this point that we need to, or are going to need to, table this and get it rewritten so that everyone is comfortable with the language.
Chair Panich, that was going to be my motion.
Okay, well.
So I'll
then,
second your motion.
Thank you very much. And Counselor McGrath Smith, do you want to say anything before we vote on this? Your hand is
No,
down.
I think it makes sense to table and look at another draft.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous. This is tabled. And we will come back with a double and triple check draft that actually matches the ordinance and that we are all comfortable with.
Triple check.
And, I'm sorry?
I said triple check is right.
And this brings us to item 6. That's the last of these. And I'm going to go straight to Councillor Bacon. Do you have any suggestions about item 6?
Well, rather than suggestions, I have concerns, and I know I'll be repeating myself, but that's okay. Sometimes that's what we do here. So right now, we have a charter that says we should be appointing a qualified treasurer. And right now, for the last 30 days, the mayor has done a temporary appointment for that position under his authority, which expires in 30 days. Mm-hmm. We will not have our charter changed by the time that 30 days expires. And we are obligated under our charter, unless we are going to decide to ignore our charter that the citizens voted to change, by ballot, we need to be appointing a qualified treasurer by the end of March, when the mayor's authority expires. None of this home rule petition is going to be completed by the end of March. Once we pass it through council, it has to go up to the state, and then it has to go into their schedule. So my concern, and I've been very clear and very vocal about this, is that A, we're defying the will of the voters. We asked to do this over a year ago. B, we're going to be continuing to do that, and we will be operating out of compliance with our own charter that we asked the voters to approve. And so I can't support removing the treasurer language when we will then in effect have no treasurer. And you're saying there will be a position of treasurer collector, except that it won't legally exist. In the charter.
Yeah.
So that's the conflict that I see, the catch-22
Okay,
that I see. Will it the
so noted, but
body and all that, but I think, you know, we should be appointing a treasurer, so.
okay, but I know
But I understand the
Yeah.
goal of the language.
Yeah, so you are, if you had an opposite perspective to this, you would have no problems with this language. I realize that I'm doubling down here because you are obviously very acute and have, studied this closely. And if you wanted to add and furthermore, this language doesn't work, I'm sure we would all be grateful if that is true. So, but I completely understand why you might not want to weigh in on that.
Hang on 1 minute, if you will. In terms of the word changes themselves, the only problem that I have is that you're eliminating treasurer, and there's nothing, well, and that's okay, because this is the portion talking about elected. So in terms of electing, that is correct, because we would no longer be electing a treasurer in any case. We would be appointing the treasurer.
Thank you.
So I
Yes.
don't see a problem with the language in that regard.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. That was my read too, but, so, I'd entertain a motion to send this to the city council with a recommendation that it pass.
I make that motion.
Okay, I'd second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll actually say yes to this because it's on the election.
Okay, unanimous. So we are done with these guys. And
Motion to take up item 7.
We don't have to do a roll call on that.
I think we did do a roll.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm looking for my agenda, which is now at the base of the pile of orders.
You need this?
Okay. Thank you.
We're on 7 now.
We're on 7, which is, the motion that was made and seconded to take up item 7?
I'll make a motion.
Yes.
I heard it. Thank
Okay.
you.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Item 7 is ordered that the Law Department and City Council review Section 22 of the Holyoke Charter to consider amendments to clarify its language and to examine whether provisions therein related to the $200 threshold for applicability and for voting procedure and thresholds should be revised or eliminated. And this actually is an order I filed at the recommendation of City Solicitor Bissonnette, and I brought it up really for discussion more than anything else. It's an interesting provision, but before I plunge into it, I would be curious about his concerns and what he thinks about the $200 language.
This is the original charter language,
Yeah,
of which $200, and I'm ashamed to say I didn't make a calculation of what the inflation would be of $200 to today's prices. But I think it certainly means that the charter founders wanted the council to be made aware and to have to vote on passing any orders of that size. A lot of the stuff about the budgets have been since superseded by a lot in chapter 40 and 44 over local powers. But it basically set up a statewide streamlined version of this. So I would just suggest that you take it out. Really, I've seen this argued once or twice, that anything, any ordinance, any order, no matter what it involves, is going to cost the city more than $200. And I say this because Chicopee, as you know, their charter is very similar and it has a provision with the same $200 that we had taken out. So that's a suggestion. It really doesn't make much difference, I don't think, in how operations work. But it seems like $200 doesn't come up very much in the city of Holyoke.
so the recommendation would be that we look at inflation and try to update it to a reasonable number. And
Just
Councilor,
leave it as any expenditure.
yeah, or make it any expenditure at all. Councilor McGrath Smith and then Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I actually went on and I found an online calculator to try to figure this out, and we're talking around $6,000 when you think about it, and and you think about like a laborer in the 1870s would earn like $1 or $2 a day. So $200 then effectively would represent like 150 days of work to 200 days of work. So it's certainly not like a trivial purchase. This would have been something that had some sort of meaningful contractual obligation. So I certainly think that we can look at the concept of, would we want to, raise it up to a number that feels, more respectful, given it's been 150 years, a number that works better. But I actually think it's a wider question of if we think the charter should regulate dollar thresholds at all. Or if we should have thresholds that live in ordinance where they can just be more easily updated. Because otherwise, it can become very difficult. Like we're going through this entire home rule petition process to make this change. So just a thought that I think we should consider, is this something that really needs to be in the charter in a firm number? Or if we want this to live in ordinance. And I do think it raises questions around oversight, because clearly I think the goal is for there to be legislative oversight over the budget and over transfers. And I think it's a question of like, where is that best seated in the charter or an ordinance, and what dollar amount seems most appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bacon.
And thank you, Chair Panich. So my read and understanding of this part of the charter is around accountability. We're not talking about budgeted expenditures. We're talking about appropriations that require a 2/3 vote of the council if it's going to be passed on the same night. And I think with the things that we're hearing going on, particularly in the state with our state auditor around issues of accounting, about our own internal accounting issues where we haven't had accounts reconciled for 3 years. I don't think this is the time to be loosening things up. I think this is the time to be maintaining our accountability and at least doing our legislative part to review the appropriations and take votes on them and not be designating every responsibility of the council to staff. I think that is a slippery slope, and I think we've already done a wholesale giveaway, for lack of a better word, of the authority of the council relative to appointments and fiduciary appointments. And so I think at this time to give away any more of that legislative review would be a mistake. But I feel very strongly about that, and I realize others not so much, but it's not about what the value of the money is, it's about what the use of the taxpayers' money is. Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to raise a different issue. And again, this is, I think, just at this stage to think about. This is an interesting provision to me because the threshold of the vote necessary changes. And, you need a supermajority and the mayor's approval if you want to get something through immediately under this. If you wait 3 days and bring it up again, things begin to shift. And we don't have a system anymore, if we ever did, where we are meeting every 3 days. So this business of if you bring it up 3 days later and then you bring it up 3 days after that, I would be interested in taking a look at, because it just, whatever you think the vote threshold should be, I understand the anti-stampeding rule as it were. This looks designed so that the mayor or any particular councilor who felt strongly about something cannot stampede the council into signing off immediately. At that point, you need the supermajority vote. And then if people have time to think about it, the threshold comes down to just a majority.
Right.
And I wonder about the timing is all, because I cannot imagine that we were ever going to have 3 days, 3 days, and 3 days. And I bring it up as something to think about, and also I see that Councillor McGrath-Smith has her hand up. So over to you.
I'm the worst at lowering my hand. I'm so sorry. That was me again.
Okay. So this is, again, a provision where I think valid questions have been raised on all sides, and I would be inclined to table this so that we can think about it and come back and consider it again with that in mind.
I'll make a motion to table.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On to item 8.
Motion to take up item 8.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And this is from Councilors Thalheimer, Panich, and Anderson Burgos, ordered that the city solicitor advise the council as to under what circumstances, if any, a person wishing to participate in public comment or to speak at a public hearing is obliged to give their name and address for the record, and what the legal basis for any such requirement would be. The question arises because, contrary to the council's general understanding, there appears to be no such requirement set forth in the council's current rules, and there has been contention over the issue that should be resolved. And we talked about this a little with item 10, with Councillor Sullivan's order about showing up on camera. But the questions are still there. At some point, I'm sure we had a rule, but it got edited out. So the rules say nothing about this. And we have 2 different circumstances, because with public hearings, you're speaking as of right as a citizen. If you are just here for public comment, as our city solicitor has pointed out, you don't have a right in that we could eliminate public comment, but if we keep public comment, it does have to be viewpoint neutral, and maybe we can do some limitations about subject matter. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Solicitor Bissonnette for advice, because I think a rule does need to be written at some point, and we should do it with some eye on what actually we can do and what the legal rationale for what we can do is.
Madam Chair, it's
Please.
a bit of a slippery slope,
Yeah.
especially after the state Supreme Court in 2023 made a decision in a case involving public comment where a citizen likened a member of the select board to the leader of Nazi Germany during the Second World War. His tone and his actual comments were pretty much the start of very large argument in the town hall. And the SJC ruled that he had an absolute right to make that comment. And that once it was established that there was a public comment period, then you have to be very clear about the four corners of what you might be able to do in terms of placing restrictions on people's ability to speak. So with that in mind, I would urge limits be placed on the content only to the extent that it reflects that you want public comments limited to those matters on the evening's agenda or those matters rightfully within the scope of the council's authority. So if someone wants to come in and say, hey, you guys may not be aware of this, but there's 60 cars parked on the lawn up in the Heights. Somebody do something about that. That wasn't on your agenda, but it is within the jurisdiction of the council. So maybe something can be fashioned in regard to the rules on public comment that basically affords people their rights, but gives the chair and the bodies an opportunity to gain some control over the dialogue if it starts getting out of hand. I'd be happy to work on something like that.
Thank you. But one question that does keep coming up is, are people obliged to state their names and full addresses for the record? Is stating what ward they're from sufficient? Do we have a legal basis for saying you have to identify yourself? And how?
You can, yes. Yes, the answer is yes to that. That can be one of the requirements. However, due respect to the concept of doxing, due respect that some of these arguments, as we saw during the ICE discussions, can get pretty heated.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do anything that's going to put someone in harm's way for expressing their First Amendment rights. So with regard to that, some communities have adopted identify yourself either by your ward or by the fact that you're a citizen of the city. Registered voter would not be acceptable because that would be sort of like a poll tax to speak, I suppose. But it just goes too far in restricting people. And the other one would be taxpayer versus resident. You couldn't have a taxpayer rule. Again, poll tax kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I believe resident would stand up to scrutiny constitutionally, but then you cannot have that for the public comment, public hearings, because those are usually mandated under state statute, and there may be outside interests that have a right to be heard on those. So those are my thoughts. I'm not sure it's guidance, but I've taken a look at this a little bit and would be happy to explore a little more to see if there's an actual best practices rule that MMA has that we may be able to adopt or use as a template.
Yeah, thank you. And I would personally really appreciate that, because I do worry about accessibility. And I worry about whether people have a right to anonymous speech. In some circumstances, they certainly would. So, but yes, if we could get some guidance on all of that, that would be great. And we can,
I'll make that as a motion that we request from the committee.
I would second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, that takes care of item 8.
So
Item
a
9.
motion to table for legal feedback?
Sure, if we need it. I would second that. Motion to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to take up item 9.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And this is Panich and Tallheimer, ordered that the council rules be examined and revised as necessary to clarify the Rule 9 provisions relating to legal form and committee procedure. And again, this is one where I suspect that the rules have now been revised so often that some nuance has been lost, because I respect the concerns around legal procedure here, and I am not sure I understand what the rules about legal form actually are or why they exist. I'm assuming that legal form, for the most part, is, when we have the language delivered in a form conforming to our ordinances. But why only the ordinance committee can ask for legal language? What makes a difference between you've written some language and its legal form? I think that it would be helpful if our rules at least included some definitions and clarifications on that. Because, I remember, or I'm sorry, Councillor Bacon.
No, that's okay. You're not, you didn't finish your thought.
Well, I'm thinking back to, it must have been at least a year ago, maybe more. There was a point where the planning board came over with a draft of some ordinance that the city council had requested. And it was an ordinance. We had talked through the policy and worked with the city solicitor's office and done some drafting of our own. And a question came up about whether we were correct in bringing what was then deemed to be a legal form, which, for all we knew, was what the city council had asked for. And eventually, we worked it out. It was somehow not legal form, even though it was in the form of a statute. And to this day, I looked at the rules and I could not, unless they were just referring to one of the ordinances, work out what legal form was as opposed to any draft ordinance that any counselor might come in with. Who was allowed to ask for legal form? I understand the notice provision. The notice provision is obviously correct and important. And of course, before we enact something, you need 48 hours to look at it. So I'm not asking about that, but the technical details of what needs to be presented and when, I think could use a lot of clarification. And again, Councillor Bacon.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I think those are great questions, and certainly clarification is always better than confusion. But what I would say is the change in the rule was to clarify the fact that it is the committee, after accepting any order filed by a counselor, that any order that wants to make an order change is putting forth either the idea, the policy, or the area that the maker wants changed. And then once it gets to committee, there had been instances in the past where full-blown legal drafts would be given to the committee before the committee even was discussing the order. And the rules were clarified to make it clear that the committee is supposed to look at the order and not be asking legal to write the legal form for the committee. We're supposed to be letting legal know what the committee wants to achieve. And then the law department is putting that into a legal form that causes that by ordinance to be in effect in the way that the city council votes it to be. So it's really a matter of making it correct. The wordsmithing, if you will, when
Yeah.
the makers of the order file it and the committee then discusses it and indicates, and we clarify that our administrative assistant would be providing the request from the committee to the law department, so that we're not just saying to the law department, can you please write up a legal form to accomplish, a broader based idea.
Okay,
So that's an overview of what happened, but to your point, if it would be helpful for there to be a legal form definition, but that was the idea, that the legal form is what actually goes into Muni Code. And none of us as individual counselors, other than a few who have worked on drafting things, typically the counselors don't write legal form type of orders. So that's just my perspective, Chair.
Yeah, no, your perspective is very helpful because I think it's a trickery kind of thing. You obviously, or I would have said obviously, can't draft a statute or an ordinance to accomplish something before you know what you want to accomplish. You kind of need to know that. On the other hand, if somebody comes in and they know what they want to accomplish, and they write it in a few sentences of legalese because they know roughly what they want to accomplish. And that's in the order and it comes in. It is not necessarily inappropriate, but it's not legal form. Legal form is actually, is what happens after, charter and rules or ordinance or whoever gets hold of it, gets to look at it. And then when you ask for legal form, it is after some discussion?
Yes, I mean, that's the process that should be happening, yes.
Okay.
And the legal form is always signed by the city solicitor's office.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. And are there any, so it is any committee that can ask for legal form or just ordinance?
Well, I haven't read through the rules again recently, but when we did the revision, it was relative to ordinance committee. But I've subsequently read opinion or law, I can't remember which, but say in the example of zoning, if it was sent to a different committee,
Yeah,
but then you're not asking for a legal form for an ordinance.
right.
It's a different thing. So it was seen as the purview of ordinance committee relative to legal form for ordinances.
Okay, so I think this is something where a change to our rules to clarify all of this will be helpful. And it also looks to me, as I relook at item 9, that the order allows us to go ahead and work on that. And I think I would entertain a motion to table for now while we work on it.
I'll make a motion to table, and you would like us to come back with thoughts or ideas on clarification?
I think thoughts and ideas would be useful, and I'm going to see if I can work on a rule that would reflect what I just heard and ask everybody to look at it when I'm done
Okay.
or in the middle of the process. So if that's agreeable to everybody,
It's agreeable
right.
to me.
I'll make a motion to table.
thank you very much. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And then I believe a motion to adjourn is in order, or no, we have item 11.
We have item 11, but
Motion to take up item 11. No,
we were, item 11,
we tabled it, yeah.
we tabled it last time. That was the rule about any city councilor named by a speaker during public speak has 2 minutes to respond at the end of public speak.
Right.
And I think we tabled it so that I think Councilor Sullivan could speak to it, but he is no longer with us.
Oh, okay.
So I would entertain a motion to retable it.
Okay, motion to table. I'll see
I'm sorry.
Jeffrey's hand up.
Yes, I just saw it. Jeffrey?
Yeah, just a quick note, back when you took up the package of items 2 through 6, I'm not sure that I heard a motion on item 2.
Oh, 2 is the general motion.
Yeah, 2, we didn't have a specific red line to go with that. That was just a, I suppose,
Do
whatever
you
we need.
consider that complied with because we've taken up the other items?
Yeah, let's consider it complied with. Motion.
All right,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that item 2 is complied with.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And you want to leave 11 on the table?
We want to leave 11 on the table.
Okay. All right, then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all very much.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Bye.
Thanks.